Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's webinar. You're very welcome. Thank you for joining us. I hope everyone can hear me okay. We were having a few technical issues beforehand. If there's any problems with hearing me or any of us during the presentation, drop a message into the chat, and India is working in the background there to help us with any technical issues. But let me introduce myself before we get started. My name is Ciara Walsh and I am the head of primary publishing here at Folens. And it's been my absolute pleasure to work on Maths My Way over the past probably 4 years at this stage, from the time we kind of first created the very, very beginnings of the programme to now seeing it used so widely all around Ireland, which is really amazing. So without further ado, I'll just show you the agenda for this evening, and then we'll get started. So Elaine Dylan is joining me on the call this evening. I can see her popped up there already. Hi, Elaine. So Elaine is our senior infants author. And she's going to talk a bit about Maths My Way for infants, so junior and senior infants, and how that works and so on. If you're on the call and you're not interested in infants, join us next week instead. Next Tuesday, we have Patrick Neary on doing 1st to 6th class. So just to make that clear from the beginning. Then we're going to have a Q&A. So feel free to drop your questions into the chat throughout this evening. We also have the questions that were submitted beforehand, so we're ready to go with those. And then I'll come back on and do a little wrap up at the end as well. Hopefully be about half an hour this evening, so we won't be here for too long, depending on how the Q&A goes, but let you get on with your evenings then. So I'm going to hand over to Elaine and let her get started.
Thanks, Ciara. I am just going to share my screen for one little moment, and let me get this ready to go for us all. Now, and 2 little seconds. So, hopefully everybody is okay with that. Ciara, you just can let me know there. You can see everything before I launch. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Hi, everybody. You're very welcome to this evening's webinar. As Ciara said, my name is Elaine, and I am the author of Senior Infants Maths My Way. I am a primary school teacher in a large junior school in Dublin. And I suppose the majority of my experience has been teaching junior and senior infants over the years, with a little bit of dash of some of the other streams within our junior primary school too. But the majority of my time has been in the infant sector, would you like to say? And this year I've actually moved into our autism class as well. So I'm getting a little bit of experience in that area too. For me, I've always been passionate about maths education, and it's no surprise a couple of years ago I decided to do some postgraduate studies, and I ended up doing my master's, where I was looking at play and mathematics as part of my thesis. So I was looking at how I can use play most effectively to, I suppose, enhance the teaching and learning of mathematics in my junior infant classroom at the time. From there, I was very fortunate to be able to go on and share my research and share my practice. I suppose I got involved in lots of professional learning communities with fellow teachers who were also very interested in maths education. And it's a lovely space to share your ideas and also learn from other teachers. And I feel like I'm always learning. It's really great to see how other teachers are I suppose as well now with the new curriculum, implementing the new curriculum, and I suppose seeing how it's working in their classrooms. I had the opportunity then arise then to work with Folens in terms of developing a program that would help to implement the new primary mathematical curriculum, and it was something that I was very excited to get involved with, because I was very passionate about being able to support teachers in helping them be able to bring I suppose really rich mathematical experiences to our classroom. So without further ado, let's get a little bit into Maths My Way. So as I said, this evening's webinar, we're going to look at Maths My Way and how it helps us to implement the new primary mathematical curriculum. I'm just going to draw our attention first to a few little pages from the curriculum that I think is really helpful for us as teachers to, I suppose, sit and to help us to maybe pause for a moment and reflect. We don't get that much time to sit, but just take a moment to pause and reflect. And in this page is page 67 from the curriculum, and And it's about the view of mathematics, as according to the primary mathematical curriculum. And it's a lovely way to sit and have a little read through it and think about, well, how does that impact in my classroom? What do I envisage my mathematics in my classroom to be according to the values of the primary mathematical curriculum? And if we look at that as this idea that mathematics is a study of the relationships, the connections, the patterns that surrounds us, and therefore that it's really intrinsic to our understanding of the concept of the world, and this idea that mathematics greatly enhances our capacity to understand and to engage with the world around us. So it is something that it's a worthy of pursuit by itself, and also this idea that children's mathematical journey begins from birth. And I suppose that was something that really stood to me when I was doing my master's research, and I was looking at the research that underpins this new primary mathematical curriculum, and there's so much volume of speaking towards the importance of building a very strong foundation in maths education from those early years, from the beginning. Okay, so every child is mathematical, and there's opportunities for every child to develop their understanding of mathematics. And I suppose that was something that it has really made me stop and think about my classroom and about how was I seeing maths in my classroom, and was it something that was imperative throughout the whole day, and it really just, I suppose, it grew lots of arms and legs for me as a result from there. So it's a lovely little page in the book just to actually sit and reflect. Another page in our curriculum that is it's really, I suppose, Patrick described it last week, if you were tuned into his webinar last week, as a great tool for a bit of an self-audit. And I actually agree with him here. And this is a lovely way just to, a little bit of, again, a pause and reflect to think, well, how can I suppose, ensure that the mathematics that is happening in my classroom, that it is rich and it's providing real strong mathematical learning opportunities for the children that I teach. And in this page, it goes through the four elements of our primary mathematical curriculum, which is understanding, connecting, communicating, applying and problem solving, and reasoning. And these are statements, but you could easily turn them into questions, and you could ask yourself, for example, they're just the very first one there, and understanding, connecting. Take time to think. So am I allowing the children in my class to have time to think about the mathematics, and to just turning them into question and asking ourselves, is that happening in my classroom? And if it isn't, let's take note of it, and let's find ways that we can try and implement that into our practice. For this evening's webinar, what we're going to do is we're going to just have a little focus in on the reasoning aspect of this. And if you can see there, I've just highlighted it just a little bit bigger for us all to see. There's the 5 points there that is outlined for us. And then again, turning them into a little bit of a question. Am I providing opportunities for the children to analyse and deduce their ideas, their strategies and solutions? Am I giving them opportunities to argue, to justify their thinking? If you read through these, you might be thinking, oh, you know what, Elaine, this is maybe more towards the senior end of the primary school curriculum. Well, what we want to pause and think here is actually this is something that's for all children, and this is something we can engage with the children right in these early years of their primary school curriculum. And you will see this when we look through the progression continua, or each of the elements are there in every single one of the stages. So we want the children engaging with these types of activities as they go through the primary mathematical curriculum. So let's have a little look at Senior Infants Maths My Way. So this is the content page for Senior Infants. And you might look at it and think, wow, there's a lot going on here. But I wanted to draw your attention to a few things, because by the very nature of this program, and Kira can stand to me on this one, is I wanted for us to have something in infants that could be flexible for us, because I think every single one of us could sit down now and say, oh, I do it this way and I do it this way, or I have support here and my classroom looks like this when I'm doing maths, and we all have very different experiences. So I was very conscious that I wanted to develop something that could really support teachers, and teachers could adapt and use it to suit their needs in their classroom. In terms of, shape and space, algebra, measures, where they're placed on the scope and sequence, you could change them into what suits you in your class. If there's a certain time where you like to do those particular strands in the curriculum. And in terms of the number sequence as well, the thing what I would say is that the speed at which you do something, the pace which you do something, will be dictated by your classroom. And I think that's really, really important for us all to just acknowledge that too, that it's like everything with the best laid plans. We may have all these best plans, we want to get through all of this stuff, but at the end of the day, the children in our classroom set the pace. And it's okay if we need a bit of a longer time in a particular area, or if we need more time. In terms of the number chapters, what I would say is that they are sequential, and they are constantly revising and building. And we did that on purpose, because something that we wanted to establish for the kids in the infant classrooms is a very strong sense of number from those early years, from the get-go. And the way we have laid this out is that there is opportunities for the children to revise, and then they're building, but they're seeing very similar, I suppose, approaches again and again and again. But each time we're trying to develop their thinking a little bit further. And so that's why I would suggest that the number sequence, you're following it in sequence. But again, if you needed a little bit of space between those, absolutely take them, because as I say, you are the expert in your classroom. You're the ones who knows what suits your class best. Also, if you're looking at senior infants, you might think, oh, look at those, the teen numbers are suddenly in there. And you might think, what are they doing in there? They never were there before in senior infants. And we'll go through this a little bit more in a few minutes. But the one thing that when we were developing Maths My Way, and this goes right through from junior infants up to sixth class, we were absolutely guided by the curriculum, and we were guided by, so you're looking at your learning outcomes. They're quite broad by nature, so you're zoning in on your learning concepts, and then when you look at your progression continua, they give you suggested learning experiences of what those concepts might look like in our classroom, and how we can help the children engage with them. And that's what we were guided with when we were looking at the number sequence, and in terms of what the children would be exploring in stage one. So if you look at the uses of number in our progression continua of our curriculum, it's for stage one, from learner A to D. They give suggested learning, saying that the children will be they'll be reading, writing, and recognizing the numbers between 1 and 20. If you look at numeration and counting is the next strand I'm thinking on. And again, from learners A to D, in the D section, they're talking about children being able to manipulate with the numbers 11 to 20. Look at this idea of, what are these numbers, being able to look at the word's gone off the top of my tongue now, but looking at being able to, to look at the numbers and what does that mean, what does 11 look like, and seeing the different variations, the different arrangements of 11, and all of the numbers to 20. So what we have put forward in our content page is completely guided by the suggested learning experiences that is in our progression continua for stage one. And again, but it comes back to our flexibility here as well. Like, I know from being able to, I was in senior infants when I was developing this program, so I had a lovely opportunity to be able to get the children to try out some of my ideas. And then last year we implemented Maths My Way, and I had an opportunity to have it for right throughout the year, from September through to the end, so seeing a full run through of it, and that was a lovely experience. But even every class you have, your maths is, it's like every subject you teach can vary greatly and very differently. And so there's sometimes the children are absolutely ready for this, and there's other times where they need a little bit more time. And that's where you have the autonomy to be flexible in terms of what is it that your children need. And if they're ready, like I found my class last year, I was probably a little bit concerned for them, because they hadn't covered number 6 to 10 in that great depth that I might have thought they needed to be able to do something like this. But the way we have structured Maths My Way for senior infants is that from September to December, we're looking solely at the numbers 1 to 10. We have so much time to revise and build, and the children get an opportunity to look at the numbers 6 to 10 in detail. We also then, have, and I'll show them for a little bit further, more resources available to us to go back to numbers that if we need a little bit more, before children ever look at the teen numbers. So my class last year, they were really ready for moving on into the teen numbers, and I was actually pleasantly surprised by how ready they were for it, and how far they could take their learning to, which was a lovely thing for me to see as a teacher as well. So just to kind of go into the planning aspect of our program. So this is an overview of a fortnightly plan. And you can see, so it's Unit 9 and Unit 10, it's coming up here, and it has all of the key language from our curriculum that you'll be looking towards in terms of your learning outcomes, your mathematical concept. It also outlines some key mathematical language, and of course, then the learning experiences then as well. But what I want to focus in on here is this the focus of new learning, okay? And every unit of work that we have, we will outline some focus of new learning, and these are then, you'll see these reflected into the slides and the lessons as we progress a little bit further. And I want to show you where did we get this focus on new learning from? Well, we were, as I said to you previously there, that we we're very much guided by the progression continua. And you can see this one here where if we zoom in here on reasoning, the element of reasoning, and look at it, numeration and counting. So this idea it's subitized how many in various regular and irregular arrangements, for example, dot patterns, arrays, frames, dice, without having to count. And what we did is we looked at that learning experience, and sometimes it might be something that you can explore within one lesson. It might be something you need to explore over a few different lessons. And where we found it was best suited, that's where we built in our new focus of learning. So let's take a little bit closer look here now at some of the resources that we have. So as I said to you, number is built in throughout, but it also has, there's great flexibility. So if in the case where the focus of new learning there was looking at number 8, but if you didn't feel your class was ready for that, you can pop back and look at some of the other numbers. And, it's just up to you then to keep track of what number you're on and when the class is ready to progress. But equally then the opportunities are there. And we have our number packs available from 1 to 10. So you can dip in and out of these at any stage. And these are just lovely resources. There's videos of 8 all around us, and then there's like ideas of seeing 8 in different forms and different arrangements, the formation of the number, and then of course some little games that help consolidate the learning around 8. And this will be available across junior and senior infant program. This is a lovely structure of how each unit is laid out. So these are just I suppose, the cover page of each of the slides, would you like to say? So we have you saw originally there our focus 4 new focuses for our unit. We always build in 5 sets of slides into a unit because we always use the 5th one as a review. Okay, so it's a bit of a weekly review. So no new learning there, but it's an opportunity for you as a teacher either to catch up or to consolidate learning, or to revisit another area maybe that you felt the children need a little bit of extra help and support in. Each one of the slides they're very uniform in the sense of they give you the title, what strand unit you're looking at, what's the lesson focus, what resources that you need. And then, of course, here down in the corner, you will see some of the picture of the book pages that are related to this particular unit. Now, every unit in junior and senior infants has 2 pages to correlate with it. Some units have 4 pages if we felt that was appropriate for that particular unit. But for standard, all units have 2 pages, and that was a very conscious decision that we made, and it was something that I felt really passionate about, that we wanted to provide space for teachers to provide children with opportunities for this hands-on experience, allowing them opportunities to explore with concrete material, and allowing them to explore with playful learning activities, and just creating space for that really rich mathematical discussion. And then the pages in the books are designed purposely to consolidate the children's learning. And equally, these pages, you could do them I would just say nearly like a standalone as well, because everybody has a way of needs of like, oh, I just need a page in the book today to do, or I need 5 minutes here or there, and that I do love that for that idea too, that they can children would be you'd be able to get them to work independently or work together depending on how you organize your classroom. So let's just go now into some examples of some activities that you might see across. So again, we're just going to focus in on Unit 9, which was looking at number 8 in detail, and then it was trying to build up this idea of a subtitling. Okay, so being able to see a number and say the number without counting. So in the early lessons, when you're looking at 8, you're looking at the children to say, what do you notice? So in this lovely one here, and especially this is something that they'll see for all of the numbers. So they get very familiar with this pattern of work over time. And what I love about this is like, it just allows us to engage with these opportunities to get the children to do a little bit of reasoning and get them to explain their strategy, get them to listen to each other and be like, oh yeah, later on we might be justifying their thinking, or being able to say, oh yeah, mine's is the same as that, or mine's a little bit different. There's just lovely opportunities for us to do that in a simple activity like this. So for in case of watching notice, the children might be looking at it, and hopefully by this stage we would have done this loads of times, so the kids be getting very familiar with it. But if it was the first time I was doing this in my classroom, and have had this many of times where, when I was, trying to encourage children to talk about their thinking, I've had that moments where I'm like, oh, how do you see, I'm just going to say 8, for example, how do you see 8, or how did you get 8? And like, I've gotten answers like, just because, when I had one thing, I just love maths. I just know it's 8. I think I love that answer. But you have to find ways to like, okay, sometimes you as a teacher, you need to model that out for them a little bit. So you might need to have to say, well, look, boys and girls, when I tell you what I see, look, I can see 8 purple dots. Will I tell you how I saw them? I saw, 5 on the top and 3 on the bottom. And then we discuss, then I know that 5 and 3 is 8. And I might model that with 5 in this hand. And then I count on, 6, 7, 8, and getting them to practice that with me. And by modeling it to them, then others are kind of being able to see that pattern and might be able to see it in different ways. And somebody might say, well, I see 2, 2, 2, and 2, or somebody might be able to say, I see 4 red apples, 4 green apples. And what I actually really love to see is by building this in from the very early stages of our math lessons, from the very beginning, you're setting up this culture that we're talking about what we see, and we're talking about our maths. And I love those moments in your classroom that, it's the children who are very quiet maybe at the beginning, and they're not really sure what to say. Everything is like after time, and when they see these activities again and again, they're the ones, you can see their little hands going up, and they're able to give you an answer based on maybe something you'd modeled, previously in a couple of different lessons before. But you can see how that benefits them, and that's really that rich mathematical talk that we can have around these types of activities that is really helping children, not only the child who is talking, because they're getting to develop their thinking and understanding, but also it's helping the others around them, because they're listening to their peers and they're like, oh yeah, I can see that too. And that's encouraging for them. This is another little style of activity that we have, where we look at a number and we might break it up into smaller numbers. And then, sometimes taking a playful twist on this, you might be thinking, trying to engage the children in learning opportunities to engage with the elements. You might be thinking something like, well, actually, let's look in each of these little characters have names. You're like, he thinks that he's going to be able to show this this in a 10 frame. I don't know, boys and girls, if he's right or wrong. What do you think? And getting them to see whether they agree or disagree, and how do they know? Can they justify their thinking? How do you know he's right? And getting them to explain that, okay, well, teacher, and they will get there. They will say, the 5 sweets on this side, that's represented by the 5 blue. And it might take a little bit of time, but it is amazing how they can make those connections, and getting them to be able to just describe what they see, but put their thinking on it, okay? And giving them that opportunity to showcase their understanding. And it's a great I suppose, teacher observation for us. It's because we can really see who is making those connections, and maybe who needs a little bit of extra support. And I love here we have a link to the polypad, where you can bring up the 10 frames and you can play around with different variations of that, and allow the children to explore. Or if you have access to iPads or Chromebooks, you can use that. The children can use that and explore the different ways that they could share the sweets out, and different models of showing different ways they could represent 8 here. And then I'm going to fly on then to some other activities, and these are more looking then, I suppose, at the looking at idea of subitizing, and this would be a very common feature that you will see. Opportunities have got let's play, so it might be where a suggested activity would be there for the children to do, and again, you might choose to do that one, but if maybe that's not something that you want to do, we do have other activities into they're placed into into the teacher notes, and there's a little bit of, you would almost say it's like a little bit of a fruit salad. Dolly, make sure you can go in there and you can choose the one that suits you, or maybe because your classroom is, you set it up in different stations or whatever it was, you might need a few different activities to keep the children, or do you need to be able to consolidate their learning over a period of time. And there's similar ideas in the teaching notes that will help to consolidate the concept that you're working on from the slides. And then this is an example of just a page from the book. Again, the children are looking at the numbers and how do you see the numbers? Sometimes I kind of try and hide what the instructions is, because there's always somebody who'd be able to read it out for you. But I'm like, well, what do you notice here? What do you think we have to do here? And I've been doing this long before that I was writing Maths My Way. It was like, just if I had a page to do, putting it up on the board and just asking the boys and girls, I was like, well, what do you think we have to do here? Let's have a little look. It's based on what we've been learning this week. Has anybody any idea? And let them reason out what they think has to be done and why they think that. And it's really interesting for them to see, I suppose, their line of thought. I'm like, sometimes like, oh God, that's really interesting. I wouldn't have thought about that. I know it's just it's I find as a teacher, it just opens up, I suppose, so much more for me to understand where the children are in their learning and how they're making connections. And it is really helpful for the children around them. So I suppose by just using this as a little prompt for us to reflect, like, are we providing opportunities for that? And in very simple ways, by the questions we ask, providing space in our classroom for the children to discuss, what were you doing there, and do you know what was your thinking, or can you explain to me, how did you do that? Did anybody else do it the same way? Did anybody else do it a different way? Is that the only way to do it? And just having a little bit of chat about it. Now, of course, every class is different, so the dynamics of that flowing will all depend on the class in front of you. But it's trying to provide that opportunity within our maths lessons, that engagement in talking about what we're doing, and talking about their thinking and talking about their learning and how they got there. That is a really important part of their mathematical learning journey. Now I'm going to take you to the Folens online library here for a little second. So let me just stop sharing for one little moment, because I have to go over here and jump over to, I think this is the page. Let me just double check. Okay. So I'm just going to do this little option here, which allows me to make it bigger on the screen. So we would really recommend you to do that on your computer. Sometimes for ages I forgot it was there, but it just gives it into full view for you. And anyway, that just will allow you, so I'm going to put that down there for you, that will just allow you to see again that overall page that I was talking about at the start. Tells you the resources you need, your strand unit, and what is the focus of learning for this particular lesson. So this is where we're looking at subitizing, and the children are building on what they've been looking at before, looking at numbers, and how do you know that that's the number 5? So how many is in the dice? Is the dice showing 5? How do you know it's 5? And getting the children to see, I can see the pattern. Some of them might be say, well, I just see 5, or some of them might see, I see 4 and 1, or someone can say they could see 3 and 2. And the more you do this, the children themselves, they're very crafty. They want to nearly impress you, so they're trying to come up with different ways to see the number. And it's lovely to see their enthusiasm with it. And then you can go on from there. Then this is the lovely slideshow, and it talks you through. You can see that, oh, boys and girls, what happened? Did anybody see the number? How do you know? And somebody might say, that's 6. How do you know it's 6? oh gosh, did anybody else see it? Did anybody, and you're trying to get them to explain, well, I saw the six because I saw three and three, or somebody might see, they might have seen it a different way. But getting the children to reason out with you, what did they see? How did they see it? How do you know? Are you sure? Does anybody else agree or disagree? And then go back and say, okay, look, this is what the number was. Oh yeah, I can see now where you saw that. Does everybody else see the three and the three? And just modeling that out with the boys and girls and getting them to make that connection, and then you're constantly building on that again. This is a lovely just a little activity. It actually talks to the kids through then about what they're doing. They've been able to see numbers without counting. It's like your little superpower. So it's a very playful spin on it, and getting the children. And it gives a lovely different variations of how you can see a number or how you can represent a number, and then it goes through looking at fingers, and then they go through different ways. And again, that disappears, and they have to guess. And you could even stop and say, okay, I'm going to play a little game with you now, boys and girls, and just turn to their pairs and getting them to show a number with their one hand, or show a number of two hands, and they have to show it for a second and then take it away, and just get them to play that out, and then you can move on a little bit further. And these ideas are built into the teaching notes here as well, so that you can pick and choose what suits your class. Now, you might say, we work through all of this, there's quite a lot in this slide, but it doesn't mean you have to do it all. You have to do what suits your class. And what I would always say is, have a check through the slides before a lesson so that you know what's coming, and well, okay, well, I want to spend more time on this, and then what, I can actually work a bit faster through this, or what, I can leave that little part for another day. We've done enough of that. I want them off to do, and maybe the hands-on learning experience what it is. Or equally, sometimes, and maybe not necessarily in this lesson, where you might not start with the slides. You might start with the activities that are described in the teaching notes, or at the end of the slides as the activity, and then you might use the slides then to consolidate learning. So I have, I suppose, chopped and changed the format and how I approach my lessons. And I think, like, again, you will know the class in front of you. Like, sometimes I know I need something just to ground them for a couple of minutes. The slides, I love that. For that, it gets them a little bit of focus. We get a little bit of talking, and then we can get off a little bit of exploring and a little bit of hands-on learning experience. Sometimes I'm like, you know what, we let them and explore, let them see what they come away with, and then we'll use all of that to consolidate some learning at the end, to bring it all together. And again, it really, really depends on your class, and how I suppose, again, being flexible in that approach, that you don't have to do, the exact same thing every day, but sometimes you might want to do that. So some children, that the actual order of it, the repetition of it, the structure of it really suits kids, and they know, okay, this is what we're doing and this would happen next, and that brings a lot of calmness to children, to be able to be like, okay, to be able to engage with it, because, they can see the structure in it too. So again, there's that flexibility there. I just kind of want to show you a few other things here before I move back to the main slides. So I'm just going to showcase here that we've all the teaching slides for all of the units here. But across here, as I said to you, we have our number packs that are available to us from 1 to 10. We do have Maths Eyes posters as well. Sorry, I'll just click off this one. We have a poster for every month here. And if anybody's ever used Have You Got Your Maths Eyes? I love those as little focus points for the children to be saying, what do you see? And then you say, well, let's focus in on maths now. Does anybody see any maths? And getting them to think about maybe if the focus is on, they might see the shapes, or maybe it'll be do with pattern work, or maybe it's something to do with measures, depending on what topic it is that's coming up through the little math size poster. And it's a lovely just little nugget to get everybody exploring. We also have lots of games built into our unit of works. So for example, if I look at just unit 9, there's a game that would be reflective towards the focus of new learning. We also have some of our Planet Maths games that have been around for a little while. They're also built into the unit. So if it particularly suits a unit, you'll see the games from Planet Maths, and then we'll always have a new game from Maths My Way to consolidate the learning a little bit further as well. And then where appropriate too, we'll have some videos too that's will match into the learning and support the whatever skill it is that we're working on. Okay, I'm going to just go back now to my original slides, if that's okay, for a little second. And I'm just going to show you I hope now I'm probably not sharing that yet, am I? Sorry now.
Not up
Um,
for yet, Elaine.
sorry, I'm getting carried away chatting away to
You're okay.
myself
You're
here.
all right. Actually.
Now, what do we see? That's just the last one I want to show you, and Kira will go a little bit further into about what's next. And I suppose what we've done here is we put together some activities from junior infants and senior infants that you might like to try out in your classroom. So these are all ones that we felt that you could take and try out and see how the kids get along with them. Let's even see like how do they engage with them, how do you find them, or even take that page 81 that I was talking about earlier and have a little look at the reasoning tools to see, use that as a little self-reflective tool and be like, okay, how can I ensure that the children are getting opportunities to reason here through these learning mathematical opportunities, and you can engage with it in that way. Kira, I'm going to stop for now if that's okay.
You got
I
your
feel
breath,
like I've been
Elaine. You've gotten through
rambling
so
there.
much. Well, thanks, Elaine, for going through all of that. And actually, it was gorgeous to get the little insight into what your classroom is like. Like boys and girls, what do we see now? And like
I
the
can't
little
help
kind of the
that.
playfulness that comes through in that. I love hearing that. And one thing I just wanted to say, and I was thinking about it as you were going through there, every time we do one of these webinars, I am amazed by how much you can pack into 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and like how much you can showcase. But the thing is, it only scratches the surface. So like what I would say absolutely to anyone who's like on here listening to us this evening is get your hands on some of this and like go in and have a look at it, because you can, and like I'll talk a little bit at the end about how to get samples and so on, but you can get sample books, and then you can go on to Folan's library, get a trial of the program, and we'll be, it's there for you to try out, because that is the way to know if it's right for you. Like completely, I think with any program, but especially when there's so much digital and different elements going on, and starting into a new curriculum as well is so daunting. So give it a try in your classroom. And as we had teachers on recently, on one of our webinars, kind of telling us about their experience of introducing Maths My Way, and it is scary and it's a lot to get used to in the beginning, changing to a new program, a new curriculum. But they saw what they described as like the magic of it coming out after using it for a while and seeing how connected things were and how the learning was building up. And we've had lovely stories of like children's confidence building in maths, and like how much their thinking in maths is being brought to the fore. So I really, really would encourage everyone to just get your hands on it and try it out. Even in this summer term coming up to the end, like pick a couple of lessons, maybe do one of the topics that you plan on covering anyway. Do it from Maths My Way, just to get a feel for it and see if it's right for you. Um, Okay, conscious that we're after 7:30, so hopefully if you're happy to stay on, anyone, we've got a couple of questions we'll just answer and then we'll wrap things up. So I've got a few that were submitted beforehand, and then anything that's come up in the chat we'll have a look at as well. So first of all, two things I want to address quite quickly, because we do get questions about these a lot when we do webinars. So one is just the multi-grade context, how to use Maths My Way in multi-grade. So on that, we've been doing quite a bit of work in the last couple of weeks, meeting with teachers who work in multi-grade to figure out how we can make Maths My Way a little bit friendlier for that context, things we can do to support them. So we should have some more supports for multi-grade coming out for Maths My Way for September. So we'll keep you updated on those. We'll send out communications as things like that are happening. We may even do a webinar dedicated to multi-grade. But we're working on kind of making sure everything is as aligned as it can possibly be, differentiating up and down, all that kind of side of things. So that's work is underway. And the other question we get asked so often is whether we've got a version of Gaeilge coming out for our Gaelscoil and our Gaeltacht schools. We currently don't. Unfortunately, I'd love to say we did. But we've been in touch with COG relentlessly. I think they probably blocked my email address at this point. But the latest that we heard from them was back in November. They were putting together groups to work on kind of what was needed to support the new maths curriculum, Oscuelga. So hopefully we'll have an update on that soon. I won't give up contacting them, so we will keep an eye out for that one. Okay, so on to some things to let you answer some of these questions now, Elaine. So we did get a couple of questions in from people just kind of asking about more of that special education kind of setting. So one in particular was looking at like working in an autism class and how you could differentiate a bit within that. I know that you've been working in an autism class this year yourself, so you've had some hands-on experience of that.
Yeah, so I suppose I did mention earlier that I am in our autism class, so it's a junior autism class, and and I guess I we have Maths My Way is our program in the school. And I guess at the start of the year, I was thinking about like how am I going to use this? And again, I was literally I'm not the expert here at all because I was learning as on my feet and trying to figure out ways what I needed to do to tailor the lessons. Some of the things that I found really beneficial for me in my setting is I actually and I really thought that I would be leaning towards I suppose all of the rich concrete ideas that was in the Maths My Way idea in a resource. And it's funny, like I still pick things out of it, but I actually find the slides such a great tool. And I don't use them every day, and I don't use them for all the topics because it depends on what I'm doing. But I actually find the visual the just the visual learning that we can get from the slides is as a really it's a really powerful tool in the classroom in terms of how I figure out what it is I'm teaching is so I do guide myself by the program and I look to see, well, what is the learning outcomes and what's the learning experience? And I don't think that's what suits the children in in my setting. I'm going and looking at the progression continua. And so I'm going to look down through the so learner A, B, C, D is kind of where I'm floating between and seeing, well, what would be most appropriate. And then what I'm trying to do is I'm looking at that learning experience and see, well, how if it's can I use the experiences that are suggested in Maths My Way, and how can I tailor them a little bit to suit what I'm trying to teach, the concept that I'm trying to teach with the kids in my class, or like that. I'm if I can't, then I'm trying to come up with nice ideas to try to support that learning. But I find myself going back towards the slides of Math My Way quite a lot in terms of just being able to use them as a great little anchor. And it's amazing sometimes because you don't you think it might be too much, but I actually think the way the slides are built and the animation in that's built into the slides, Kira, they're it's really like soft and gentle, if you know what I mean. Okay, some of the sounds mightn't be ideal, so sometimes we turn off the
There's a
sounds,
mute
but
button there. Yeah.
yeah, but it is great. But it's the numbers, because when we're exploring the numbers and we're looking at the different arrays of the number, and you're looking at number, say, so you're looking at number 11 or 12, and they can see 12 in different ways, and it's such a great way to reinforce that. Because sometimes I find, well, I use concrete materials a lot. I sometimes I find if I'm trying to go in with maths material straight away, I don't get very far. So I have to make sure see get something that the children are interested in. So whether it's animals or a particular Paw Patrol, or whatever their area of interest is, and try and make a little resource around that to try and bring in the mathematical idea that we're trying to teach. And then what I often do is I leave the math resources out for the children to play with. And what I'm finding is over time, because we're coming back to those same types of activities, that then I can bring in those mathematical material, and the children are engaging with it in that way. And then that's the way I can build up their learning then, in terms of like following the progression continua. Um, I don't know, Kira, within that too, like in terms of resources that I find really handy in the autism class. Like I said already, I love the visual slides, and but I also in terms of Numicon is also a great one that I'm finding in my classroom. So, and I said use a material that is associated with things that they're interested in, and also like using a lot of play in terms of like if we were doing weight, we're using it via animals. We're talking because maybe that be something they're interested in, and we're maybe saying which one's heavier, what's just lighter. Trying to use the things the children are interested in the toys and bringing them into I suppose to discuss maths
Yeah.
ideas without because I'm a very much child led, so allowing them to be the director of their learning and me guide them in that way. But you're always the maths brain is always thinking, I'm like, okay, what way can I help to bring in some of these mathematical concepts.
Yeah.
I look, there's so many other things, like I don't know if I mentioned the 10 frames too. We do use them a lot in the program, and it's such a great resource. But like that, I've tried to bring them in straight away. And it didn't work. But as I said, I left it around, played with it, use it as a model sometimes, and just leave things sitting out of it. It might be a couple of days, it could be even a week later. I can see the kids coming back to it, and then I know, okay, we can try to engage with this now and explore, well, what can we do with the 10 frame and things like that. So there's a lot of just I suppose playful movement back and forth, but it's repetition as well, Kira, that I'm finding that really stands to me in terms of I suppose planning for my maths lessons in the
Yeah,
autism class.
playful movement back and forth actually is a lovely way to describe that. And actually, I'm gonna ask you a question to do with play then, because segues nicely into it. But someone was asking about tips on integrating play, and I think play is such a massive part, obviously, of the new maths curriculum. And I know, Elaine, play is your area as well, is what you kind of focused on for your masters and so on. So, just any kind of tips you have about and I think it's in the program, I should say, like the guidance is there, but if you've got any like specific kind of tips for people.
Yeah, and Kira, I think asking me that question, I'm like, oh, I could go off in so many different tangents because
I
there's
know,
so
and I'm
many
like,
different ways that we can
portate.
look at it. You're like, come on, Lane, speed yourself up here now a little bit. But I suppose two things I would say about play is I used a mantra in my thesis study. It was notice, explore, and talk about mathematics. And when I think about play, it's not just the activities that the children are doing, so not just the concrete activities. It's about that playful approach to it. So excuse the pun, but playing around with the maths. So we talked about the reasoning, getting them children, describing their thinking and being a little bit almost playful in our actions, like being a little bit silly in terms of like, teacher makes a mistake. Oh, I don't know how to do this, boys and girls, normalizing that it's okay to make mistakes. And that's the idea, because play is that space where children are allowed, they're just, there's no expectations, so they're free to make mistakes and therefore they're free to learn. And it's just having that I suppose a more of a playful approach in our teaching when it comes with, and being okay to be a little bit silly or make the mistakes and get children to I suppose correct you, or to be able to be like, okay, what do you think we need to do here, and kind of follow their lead, and being able to then see if you can guide them towards to developing their learning. I also, just before I leave you on that note here, I did a lovely course recently, and it was to do with autism and play, but it was talking about the facilitator was talking about puppets, and it made me think about and I used to do it years ago, and I think I've kind of lost my way a little bit, but bringing in like a little maths puppet, and now
Yeah,
they're either one who always gets something right or something wrong, and the boys and girls have to agree or disagree,
yeah.
that they're right or they're wrong, or can you help him, he doesn't know how to do this, is there any ways that we could help him, and trying to come up with all the different suggestions, be able to do something. So it's just a lovely way to be very playful when you're engaging with the maths.
Elaine, I fear that there are probably people within Folan's here going, "Oh, puppets! We could make puppets of the characters." And to be honest, I would probably be one of those people. So
Yeah, well, Kira,
we
I
never know
think
what
that
we
might
might
be an
have for
idea.
next year. And actually, speaking of that, someone did ask me about in the questions beforehand about having the printables of the characters that you can put up in your classroom. They will be live on library within the next week or so. I've handed them over to our digital team, so they'll be popping up there. Little
Amazing.
practical things like that, by the way. If like anyone, if you're already using the program or you're using it next year or anything like that, I love getting ideas in like that. So don't ever be afraid to, contact our customer service department, or if you're speaking to your local rep, if you've little ideas for things, because sometimes there's something like that we can make happen really, really quickly. Some other things take longer, but it's still, we love having those ideas. So that's a great one as well. Um, what else we got on the practical frontier? There's someone was asking about providing a list of recommended hands-on materials. That is also something that we'll have up soon. Because we have lists of those available. We always say at the bottom of the pages of the student book and on the opening slide of the teaching slides, we always have our suggested hands-on resources for a lesson. Only ever a suggestion. As Elaine was saying, kind of sometimes it's just, what do you have to hand? What are the kids interested in? There's different things that are going to guide you on that, but we have our suggestions there. We've got a list of them. We'll get those made available as well. So you can have those. Let's see what else we got here. Again, conscious of time. If there's anything we haven't gotten to, we can follow up with you afterwards. Just looking at the chat here. Just in terms of aligning the programs, I know someone's asking that about multi-grade. So yeah, we're very aware that probably junior and senior infants are the two classes within Maths My Way that are not as aligned. From first class upwards, there is quite a bit more alignment, and many different reasons for why it kind of that happened that way. But what we're working on for September is like an alternative pathway through the program in if you're teaching junior and senior infants together, and what to pull from each level. So you might be covering the units in order, but that it will still work. So we're working on that for September. Um, Someone was asking about, is it possible to access the digital aspects of the program even if you decide to go without books in infants? Absolutely. We know that there are a lot of schools now actually opting to go without books all the way up to school, but particularly in infants. The books themselves are very light, as Elaine has touched on. It's 2 pages per week, occasionally a little bit more in senior infants, but generally it's 2 pages per week. So we really try to lighten the kind of the role of the book, I guess, to leave room for all that hands-on learning. But there are digital only options, so absolutely get in touch with your local rep or email into us, get in touch with us, and there's loads of different offers and packages and things that just to work for your setting and what you want to do. And we've also had a lot of people this year, I think it's a great idea, go with the digital only first, see how that works, gradually get used to the program and so on, and then they might go with the books then the following year. So that's another thing you could do. I've got a few typos or mistakes in slides, book pages on slides not correct, etc. There are a few of those which we have spotted this year. When a page in the book doesn't match something on the slide, it's usually because we've had feedback on something that we've then changed in the book. So it just might be an older edition of it. That will all start to smooth itself out. I know someone asked about that as well. There's like 3-4 things which, as we got feedback on, we changed, but then some of the original copies of the book are still in circulation. But that should definitely even itself out. And I do say to people as well, if you find you've got one copy that's slightly different, we can get in touch with us. We can swap that out for you. So there's things we can do to try and help with that as well. Any typos or mistakes that are there, I am afraid, are human error. We are we're all humans here making the programs. We're very much human made. So anything that does come up, we fix it as quickly as we can. Once it's been flagged, we get in. And the great thing about digital is we can do that. So we do apologize for any mistakes or typos that have come up, but it is just unfortunately a human error. So when the robots take over in the AI and so on, they probably won't make those mistakes. But I don't think we also want to make sure that we're still humans creating these programs. Let me see, did I miss anything else there? There was a question just about 3D shapes. Actually, Elaine, this one kind of be relevant for you as well. Just someone was saying they were looking at the core book sample that they have in the school, and there appear to be fewer 3D shapes covered than in the program they're currently using. And is there a particular reason for that? Now, I know just from the progression continuum myself, there's no specification on what shapes to cover. It's more about what you're doing is you're learning about the properties of them and so on. But I don't know, Elaine, if there was any kind of thought process in exactly what was covered when you were.
No, Kira, you've kind of hit the nail on the head there with that one. Is because there's no the curriculum itself is it's broad by nature. So then when you look at the progression continue, they're just giving they're not suggesting to you specific shapes to look at. So as you said, they're looking at the properties and your and all of those aspects. So I suppose what we did is we give a guidance, but that does there's not a ceiling on that. If there is that scope if your classes are able, it comes back to that flexibility. If they're ready to explore more, then you might introduce more to them. But again, I suppose it's trying to find that balance within a program too, that you're not just throwing everything in just and just to cover stuff, rather than just, okay, well, let's take this, let's do it deeply, and then if the class has got that, then yeah, definitely you can go further with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that probably relates to another question we get sometimes, is about why we covered numbers up to, and I know you touched on this as well, Elaine, already, but why we kind of went up to number 10 in junior infants.
Yeah, exactly. And I know I probably was doing a whistle stop tour of that, Kira, on it when we was going through it. But again, we were completely guided by what the progression continuum was saying. And I suppose one thing I don't think I mentioned there was, like, yes, while the children are looking at the numbers up to 20 in senior infants, and they're looking at numbers 11 and 20, as according to the progression continuum, it's in terms of suggested learning activities, in terms of what they're looking at the numbers, and looking at the numbers within a number. So the idea, they're building up their ability to manipulate numbers, and to be able to to break numbers down, and to be able to build them back up again, so that when the numbers, as they get more exposed to higher numbers, they're able to do that in the hundreds, the hundreds, tens, and units, and so forth. But in terms of addition, I don't think I mentioned that at all, is that the children are still They're still, the addition is still focusing between 0 and 10. And that again was aligning with what the progression continuum was suggesting as a sample learning experiences for children in stage one to consolidate their learning with the operations between 0 and 10. But then the numbers from uh 0 to 20, would you like to say that they're the ones that they're playing around with and trying to, as I said, manipulate them as they pull them apart to put them back together to build up that strong number sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, and any decision we made, I know you said it as well, Elaine, absolutely everything we did in this program was based on the curriculum. Like that was the Bible for us in terms of like this program. So that's where all our decisions came from. Very conscious it's 5 to 8, so I'm gonna wrap things up. If we didn't get to your questions, we'll follow up with you afterwards. Whether it be your sales rep or myself, I'll come back to you. But just to wrap up, actually, Elaine, are we seeing my slides?
Yeah,
We're all
we are
here
here.
that
Yeah.
yeah. Perfect. Technology, not my friend. Just to mention, not so relevant if you're infant teachers, but just to mention, it would be remiss of me not to say our new product that is out. It's called My Maths Practice, and it's your day. It's a daily mixed topic revision. It's for first to sixth class, so not necessarily relevant for this cohort. But if you are teaching different classes next year, or you want to just let anyone in your colleagues know in your school, this is basically our take on your kind of what are sometimes called those mental maths books, or the books you'd use for homework. So you've got your Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday structure. You've got you're covering all your strands, so it's mixed. So it's this that constant revision, keeping all that ticking over, so much work has gone into the structure of this, and the layout, the accessibility of language, the color, just making it as accessible as possible for children, particularly if they're going to be using it independently. And the structure itself is so like tight in terms of you've got the say, question one is always, for example, that's the first and second class overview I'm showing there. Question one is always numeration and counting. Question two is your place value and base 10. So it's the same structure. Children know what to expect, and you can really easily look at it and see where children are strong, where they might need some extra support, and so on. So just to note that is out. There's some lovely special offers and free gifts and stuff going on with that at the moment. So get in touch again, drop onto our website or get in touch with your sales rep if you want to find more about that. And then just what's next. So if, as I said, you've got, if you yourself are kind of any interest in finding out more about first to sixth class, or your colleagues, let them know that we're back next Tuesday with Patrick Neary, who's our first to sixth class series editor and co-author, and we'll be going through some of the Maths My Way for first to sixth. You can get a trial of Maths My Way on my Phone's library, which I've already mentioned. Best thing to do, go in there, try it out, use it with your class, and then indeed get in touch with your local sales rep. There's all the details are on folens.ie if you need to find out who your sales rep is and get their contact details. They will be able to talk to you about, come in and do a presentation if you want, give you more information, special offers, finding a package that suits your school, all of that kind of stuff. And then finally, there is a survey here. The link, Indy is going to drop the link into the chat, but we'll also email it to you tomorrow. So if you need to run off, don't worry about that. You pick it up tomorrow and fill that out. You can request demos, you can access your trial through that, you can request samples, and you put in your details for your yearbook that you'll get for attending this evening as well, and they'll be dropped out in the next couple of weeks. So I think that is everything. As I said, if we missed anything, we'll follow up. But thank you all for taking an hour out of your Thursday evening to spend with us. And Elaine, thank you very much as well.
Thank you, everybody.